last but not least, we're going to jump into this recovery portion of the module. I want to make this statement quite clear that recovery is not the absence of activity. It's an active process. When you leave this lesson, you should be thinking that I need to turn on recovery. You don't just stop what you're doing and then that becomes recovery. You actually actively have to do certain steps, certain measures to turn on recovery to maximize optimization. And I think that's the key factor. So we talked about recovery earlier from a nutritional standpoint. So we talked about having proper energy balance. We talked about that golden hour as key to recovery. And then we talked about proper nitrogen balance through having enough protein on board, which was the 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. So I won't review that here, but that is technically recovery. We also talked about sleeping for recovery. So having proper sleep hygiene, working on getting high quality and sufficient quantities of sleep are both the foundational aspects of sleeping for recovery. So making sure that the nutrition is right and making sure that the sleep is right is absolutely key to recovery. That turns on the recovery. That allows the body's machinery to work as effectively and efficiently as possible. Now let's talk about some other things that may be out there that are lesser known. So post-workout, I think a great strategy is to turn on rest. So if you are used to intense music, aggressive music during your workout, you want to turn that down, right? Your body is in that so-called flight or fight response. And what we want to do is we want to turn the body into that recovery, rest, and digest. The music plays a role here. So you want to turn it down to some softer, slower music that can potentially help the body improve its recovery. Additionally, we want to work on regulating breathing. So a good technique with that is something called box breathing or triangular breathing. And basically an inhale for 6, slow, hold for 3, and then exhale for 8. And you can mess with the numbers, but why I like that is this is the body's ability to turn off the sympathetic nervous system and turn on the parasympathetic, the rest and digest. You're literally turning the dial down and turning the intensity down and increasing recovery. I also like practicing this box breathing because you may need that technique when you're in a game, when you're having stress and you're too amped up, and learning how to do that breathing technique during workouts or after workouts can be quite useful. Additionally, cold water immersion is something that can be useful to help with muscle soreness. I think it's important to make sure you are managing your recovery depending on what part of the training or competition you're in. So cold water immersion can be helpful with muscle soreness, but if you do cold water immersion after a training, you may be actually inhibiting the body's response to create hypertrophy or bigger muscles during that time. So you may want to delay your cold water immersion right after a workout session. Whereas if you are doing it purely for soreness in season, then you might want to get on it right away. The thought is that cold water immersion should be cold enough that you want to get out, but warm enough that you can stay in. So if it's just a cool bath, that's really not cold water immersion. It should be cold that you want to get right back out, but you have the strength to stay in. And your body does need to get used to that as well. And then NSAIDs, so this is your ibuprofen, your Aleve, medications that can help with sore muscles. We want to avoid those during the recovery period because they may have a negative impact on your strength gains. So specifically, your body wants to have a inflammatory response to the workout that you just did, and we believe that that actual response is a good thing, and it stimulates recovery, it stimulates new muscle synthesis. And by blocking that inflammatory response with your NSAID medication, ibuprofen, Aleve, that may actually limit the benefit that you got from the workout. So we want to try to restrict our usage of NSAIDs. And then compression gear, massage, pneumatic compression, that can aid in reducing muscle soreness. So if you have some muscle edema or fluid kind of buildup within the muscle, using some compression gear can be helpful. Pneumatic compression is kind of where these machine is kind of compressing on your body and helping to work the fluid out of the muscles. That can be useful. I don't have any evidence in pediatric population. I will mention that compression gear can be great for travel, and so I would highly recommend using compression gear, full body compression gear, especially if you have a flight or if you have a long road trip. Compression gear can be good at keeping you hydrated and keeping the body primed for competition, whereas long flights can lead to some fluid shifts that may be to your disadvantage. And then low-level movement and stretching. I think, again, if soreness is the issue, potentially just some light jogging, exercise biking, light stretching can be just as beneficial as some of the more expensive or attractive recovery strategies. And I think that's probably the easiest thing. So if you have a intense training session or competition, you have a day off, just some low-level movement and stretching can be helpful for soreness in that recovery process. And then I wanted to mention red light therapy. I am not an expert in red light therapy, but I did wanted to discuss it because I do get a fair amount of questions regarding red light therapy. And I just wanted to point out that this is what, at least it's believed to help in recovery of athletes. So it's believed to help in muscle soreness, also improving muscle repair. There is some thought that it can help in enhancing energy production. So if you remember way back when I talked about the ATP, well, that ATP is made in the mitochondria, and mitochondria are thought to be affected by red light therapy. And then better quality of sleep. I'm not aware of any evidence of the benefit in young athlete population, so I'll continue to look into that. But I wanted to make sure you're aware at least what red light therapy is claimed to be able to do. Now, I also want to mention how red light therapy is thought to work. So red light or near infrared light from a particular device is absorbed by the cells. It's not the same as UV light, so it's a different type of light, and it's targeted to certain cells. In our case, it's going to be targeted to muscles. And that absorbed light is thought to stimulate the mitochondria, which can then increase their production of ATP. As we talked about, that's the main energy source. And so the body will then use that ATP for tissue repair, for recovery, for reduced inflammation. So that's kind of the thought process behind red light therapy. And I think at least physiologically, it seems to make sense. I just don't know if there's any data to say that that actually is the case in younger athletes. All right, that's it for the load management and recovery portion. I'll see you in the next module.